bergamot and gun oil. I prefer the term logistics enterprise, Gabriel corrected smoothly, though a dark amusement danced in his eyes. But yes, for the past 8 months, someone inside my inner circle has been siphoning capital. They are routing it through legitimate subsidiaries, washing it, and making it vanish. My internal accountants are competent, but they are looking at the trees. I need someone who can see the forest. I need a predator. Nora pulled the lapels of his jacket closer. If I do this, I cross a line, Gabriel. I become an accessory to whatever it is your enterprise does. You cross a line into my protection, Gabriel countered, stepping closer. Tell me, Nora, what has playing by the rules gotten you a brilliant career where your boss takes the credit? An ex-fiancé who publicly humiliated you because his fragile ego couldn't handle a woman with substance. He reached out his large, rough hand, gently tucking a stray curl behind her ear. The contrast between his dangerous reputation and his tender touch made her breath hitch. I do not want a starving, hollowed-out corporate drone, Gabriel murmured, his gaze dropping to the lush curves of her waist and hips enveloped in the emerald silk. I want a woman who takes up space, a woman whose mind is a labyrinth and whose body is a masterpiece. Work for me, Nora. Expose the rot in my house, and I will make you untouchable. Nora looked out at the glittering skyline of Manhattan. The safe world inside that ballroom had only ever offered her judgment, restrictions, and pain. The shadows Gabriel offered promised respect. I need complete access, Nora said, turning back to him, her voice steady. Unredacted ledgers, offshore shell companies, crypto wallets, everything. And I work from my own secure servers. Gabriel smiled, a slow, devastating curve of his lips. Consider it done. By Tuesday morning, Nora's home office had transformed into a war room. Gabriel had not exaggerated. The financial architecture of Moretti Logistics was a dizzying, hydra-headed beast spanning 3 continents. To protect her, Gabriel had implemented strict protocols. 1. Absolute isolation. She was to take a leave of absence from her firm, citing a family emergency. 2. Secure communications. All findings were to be transmitted via a heavily encrypted offline terminal his technicians installed in her living room. 3. Physical security. She was never to leave her apartment without the 2 towering men in dark suits stationed discreetly in her building's lobby. For 72 hours, Nora lived on black coffee and sheer adrenaline. She cross-referenced shipping manifests with phantom real estate holdings in Dubai, tracking the microscopic breadcrumbs the thief had left behind. She was a woman, possessed her plus-size frame, comfortably curled into her large office chair as her fingers flew across the keyboards. On Thursday night at 2 a.m., she finally found the thread. She began mapping the discrepancies, building a clear matrix of the stolen funds. The thief was clever, hiding the money in plain sight by inflating the depreciation of international cargo ships and routing the losses into dummy holding companies. But it was the final routing destination that made Nora's blood run cold. The funds from the Panama wallet were being funneled back into the United States. They were being injected into a failing private equity fund to artificially inflate its numbers and prevent an SEC audit. The fund was Oaktree Capital Management. The account manager handling the injection was Bradley Harrison. Nora sat back, her mind spinning. Bradley wasn't just a cruel, incompetent hedge fund manager. He was a money launderer. But Bradley was entirely too stupid to engineer a scheme this complex. He was a pawn. The person who structured this needed to have intimate knowledge of forensic accounting to bypass Gabriel's internal audits and intimate access to Oaktree Capital. Her eyes darted to the digital signatures on the dummy holding companies. They were masked with a routing algorithm she recognized instantly. It was a proprietary masking technique developed by her own firm, specifically by her managing partner, David Montgomery. David. The man who had mentored her, who had smiled in her face while repeatedly passing her over for a partnership because she didn't fit the firm's aesthetic image. David and Bradley were working together to bleed the most dangerous man in New York. Nora grabbed the encrypted phone Gabriel had given her. She dialed his private number. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me you have a name, Mia Bella." Gabriel's dark voice purred through the speaker. "I have two," Nora said, her heart pounding. "And we are going to need a very specific trap." Friday evening, the rain in Manhattan fell in heavy, freezing sheets. David Montgomery sat in his expansive corner office overlooking Wall Street, pouring himself a glass of 20-year-old Macallan. He was a man who prided himself on control, on his impeccable silver hair, and his ruthless efficiency. The heavy oak doors of his office swung open without a knock. David frowned, turning around. "I told the reception desk I wasn't to be—" He stopped. Nora walked into the room. She wasn't wearing her usual conservative office wear. She was wearing a perfectly tailored crimson trench coat over a black, curve-hugging dress, her dark hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. She looked powerful, vibrant, and utterly unafraid. "Nora." David blinked, setting his glass down. "You're supposed to be on leave. What are you doing here at this hour?" "Auditing David," Nora said smoothly, walking toward his desk and tossing a thick manila folder onto the polished mahogany. "I thought you'd be interested in my latest findings, specifically the Cobalt real estate ledgers." David's polite smile froze. The color drained from his face at a terrifying speed. He stared at the folder as if it were a live grenade. I don't know what you're talking about," David stammered, his hand subtly reaching for the heavy brass paperweight on his desk. "Don't insult my intelligence," Nora said, her voice dripping with ice. "You used my proprietary routing algorithms to mask your theft. You stole nearly $40 million from Gabriel Moretti, and you used Bradley Harrison's massive losses at Oaktree to wash the money. Bradley thought he was a genius, securing private equity bailouts, but you were just using him as your laundromat." David's grip tightened on the paperweight. The sophisticated facade crumbled, revealing the desperate, cornered rat underneath. "You always were too smart for your own good, Nora," David hissed, taking a menacing step out from behind his desk. "But you're just a fat, invisible accountant. No one is going to believe you. In fact, if you happen to suffer a tragic accident on your way home tonight. I highly doubt that." The voice came from the shadows of the office doorway, cold and final as the grave. David froze, a pathetic squeak escaping his throat. Gabriel Moretti stepped into the light. He wore a black cashmere overcoat, the rainwater glistening on his broad shoulders. Behind him, two of his massive enforcers quietly closed and locked the office doors. Gabriel didn't even look at David. His eyes went straight to Nora, checking her for any sign of distress. Finding none, he smiled a proud, dark smile that made Nora's stomach flutter. "Mr. Montgomery," Gabriel said, finally turning his attention to the trembling senior partner. The temperature in the room plummeted. "You have something that belongs to me. Actually, you have 40 million things that belong to me. Mr. Moretti." David dropped the paperweight. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. He fell to his knees, his expensive suit wrinkling against the carpet. "Please, I can return it. All of it. Bradley has the liquid assets I can—" "Bradley Harrison is currently enjoying the hospitality of my associates in a soundproof basement in Queens," Gabriel interrupted softly. He has already sung quite a beautiful song about your partnership. But you insulted Miss Caldwell. You stole her work. You stifled her career. And just now, you threatened her life." Gabriel walked slowly across the room. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't draw a weapon. But the sheer oppressive gravity of his presence made David sob in terror. "Take him," Gabriel ordered his men without looking back. "Empty his accounts, strip his assets, and then take him to the harbor. We have cargo ships that require maintenance in international waters." "No, please, Nora, tell him we're colleagues," David screamed as the two enforcers hauled him to his feet, dragging him toward the private service elevator. Nora looked at the man who had tormented her for years, the man who had made her feel small, invisible, and unworthy. She didn't feel pity. She felt vindicated. "Goodbye, David," she said simply. The heavy doors clicked shut, plunging the office into silence, save for the rain lashing against the glass. Nora let out a long, shaky breath, the adrenaline finally crashing. She closed her eyes, suddenly hyper-aware of the danger she had just navigated. A warm, heavy hand settled on her waist. Nora opened her eyes to find Gabriel standing mere inches away. The terrifying syndicate boss was gone, replaced by a man looking at her with overwhelming hunger and profound respect. "You were magnificent," Gabriel murmured, his thumb gently tracing the curve of her hip through the red trench coat. "Fierce, brilliant, and absolutely terrifying. My men were placing bets on whether you would need me to intervene at all." Nora laughed, a genuine, breathless sound. "I think I prefer having backup." "You will always have me," Gabriel said, his voice turning deadly serious. He stepped closer, crowding her against the edge of the mahogany desk. "No more hiding in the shadows, Nora. No more apologizing for taking up space in a room. You belong at the top of the empire." He leaned down his lips, brushing against her jawline, trailing fire down her neck. Nora arched into his touch, her hands sliding up the lapels of his wet cashmere coat to tangle in his dark hair. For the first time in her life, she wasn't worrying about how her stomach looked, or if her thighs were too wide. With Gabriel's hands gripping her lush curves like she was the most precious treasure on earth, she felt powerful. She felt beautiful. "And what exactly is my role in this empire?" Nora whispered, her breath catching as his lips met the corner of her mouth. Gabriel looked deep into her eyes, the dangerous, possessive loyalty of a Mafia king burning in his gaze. "Whatever you want it to be. Mia Regina." He vowed softly right before he kissed her, claiming her mouth with the same ruthless, undeniable authority with which he ruled his city. The cold corporate world had tried to make Nora Caldwell shrink, but in the arms of the devil himself, she had finally learned how to reign. Did Nora's epic revenge on her toxic ex and corrupt boss give you chills? Sometimes the best way to handle a shattered heart is to become the queen of the underworld. If you loved this fierce, curvy heroine and her protective mafia, King, smash that like button. Share this story with someone who loves a good revenge plot, and subscribe to our channel for more dramatic, thrilling romance stories every single week. See you in the next video.